another another interview in this series, I should say, as we're really trying to bring you a local look at how this health crisis is impacting our community from a variety of different angles. As I stated before, this is we have a number of ideas in the works as we are working on trying to get all those ideas out there for you. But there's so many different angles to this, so many different people that are impacted, industries that are impacted, all of that, that I really wanted to utilize some of our Dane by Local members, their expertise, and really be able to bring you good information so you can understand some of the things that are going on in the world. If you're a customer of certain industries or certain businesses, it's important to know this stuff. Also, just as humans, and as we're connected in the community, it's important to know as well. So I'm really excited to be able to continue on as we're going to talk to Chad Speight of Chad's Design Build in just a moment. But before we jump in, we do have to remind you that if there's any opinions given on this program, it's either my opinion or the opinion of the guest, not necessarily representative of Dane by Local itself. So just keep that in mind. And then the other piece that's really important for you is, again, that we're not just focusing on medical here. We're focusing on our community and how we're all impacted by this. So with that, I welcome Chad Speight from Chad's Design Build. Chad, thanks so much for coming on and talking to us today.
Thanks, Jason. It's always great to talk with you.
So I wanted to really look at a number of things, Chad, because obviously this has been a tricky situation for a lot of people, but specifically in the remodeling industry as well, when we think about, working in people's homes where people are supposed to be staying safe right now, what kind of challenges has that presented?
Oh, yeah. Well, so it's interesting, back about 3.5 weeks ago when we were formulating our policy prior to the stay-at-home order, thinking about how are we going to safely work in homes, we had just started a complete renovation of a small home where their 3 bedrooms were being ever so slightly reconfigured to make the house more space efficient. This is a 3-bedroom home with 4 people living in it, young children who had just a few weeks before come home from school, and they were all living in their basement while we were going to renovate their house. And we had already torn things apart and they really had nowhere else to go, but we were coming down into their basement to rework their plumbing. And, we were concerned about it. They were concerned about it. They had signed off initially on saying, go ahead with this project. We understand what you're doing. We support that. We're all in. But then Monday came and we were all kind of like, wow, this doesn't feel like it's safe. It doesn't feel like it's going to work. And by the end of the day, they just said, let's talk. Let's talk about this. And we decided, this is the one safe place they have to shelter in place. Their kids are there. They're at home, working from home. It doesn't make sense to bring a bunch of random professionals. Even if we know exactly what we're doing, we're still trying to figure it out. Even now, 3.5 weeks later, at that moment, it felt completely inappropriate to continue with business as usual. So we pulled back, and subsequently we've pulled back with other clients just so that we can all reassess how do we contemplate coming into your home when for all of us now, our home is that one safe place. So it's been a challenge. I cannot overestimate how challenging this has been for us as a residential remodeling company. Most of our clients live in modest homes that they're wanting to keep modest. They're wanting to live in a relatively small footprint. They want their house to be, more comfortable, more efficient, better better laid out, but they're not looking to add 1,000 square foot addition or anything like that. And yet now, we used to put up barriers to protect our client from the work zone. And now that isn't quite good enough anymore. And it wasn't uncommon, we would have zip walls and people could come and go at the end of the workday. But all of that now has to be reassessed. And so we're going through that process of reassessing it. And, there are a lot of aspects of that to talk about. I know you and I talked a little bit before the interview. There's so many things that we're having to reassess at this moment. For example, typically when we work on someone's home, we set up that barrier and we separate the living space for the homeowner from the workspace for our project. And we have an air scrubber that we set up, and we start to pull air out of our workspace and exhaust it out of the house, cleaning it prior to exhausting it. So whatever contaminants that we stir up while we're working, we've got on our protective equipment, but then we are pulling that air and we're exhausting cleaned air from the house. And that does two things that are really important under typical working conditions. It helps to bring fresh air from the regular home that's not being renovated into our space, which then helps to reduce the amount of dust from our space from getting into the home, which is very important. And then it exhausts clean air to the outside so that no one is threatened by what we're doing. But the problem is now we have this virus that potentially our homeowner could have, and we're pulling air from their space, which would typically be a safe space, and bringing it into our working space. And so that's not something that we would want to be doing without understanding that we're doing it and understanding that we've taken the necessary precautions for for everyone who's working on the job in that bubble to be able to be safe. So we've had to reassess that practice. And we have some ideas, but it's a work in progress right now. We're trying to figure out what is the best way to imagine a new environment that not only accommodates the risks that we all knew about before when we remodeled, and remodeling has all sorts of potential risks that we have always tried to manage professionally on behalf of our client and our workforce. But now we have these new risks and we're trying to figure out, what does that do to how we do business so that we can do it, again, in a safe manner as we think about moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you had said that to me before when we were talking. I thought that was such a great point. You said we've always had risks, but this is different. This is a whole different animal to try to tackle, and the society's trying to figure it out. But in the remodeling industry, you're trying to figure it out too. Like, how can you best get back to regular operations or operations that are safe for everybody and still do the work that needs to be done?
That's correct.
Yeah. Wow. I thought that was such a great point. Chad, you, okay, so you are the president of Chad's Design Build, and your company, we kind of jumped ahead there, but just give people a little bit of background on you and your company quick before we move forward into a few other topics.
Sure. So we are a residential remodeling company. We pretty much work almost exclusively on single family homes. We've done a handful of condominium projects. And of course, that gets into a whole nother can of worms. If we regularly worked on multifamily dwellings, and we'd really have a host of issues to think about. So we're primarily working on a single family home. So we show up and, you know, the homeowners, typically that family, whatever that, you know, and it could be one person and it could be multiple people, but that, those are the folks that we're working for, and they're also the people that we have to make sure we keep safe while we're working. And we've been doing this for about 28 years. Throughout most of our history, my business was called Chad's Carpentry. And many people still know us as Chad's Carpentry, but we've been Chad's Design Build for about 5 years now.
Wow. So, I mean, you talk about the longevity there. Obviously, you guys are doing something right because you've been around 28 years as a local remodeler. So, tell me a little bit how the company has grown. So, when you started out, how many people did you have, and how many do you have now?
Yeah, well, so in the first couple of years, I was a 2 to 3 person operation. And at one point back around 2006, there were 11 of us, but for the last 8 years, we've been a company of 9 to 10 people. We have right now 4 skilled carpenters that are out there working in people's homes every day. And then we have a project manager, a production manager who manages all of their comings and goings and helps to expedite things. And then I have a person called a project developer who does planning on the front end. He's also my assistant general manager here. And then we have a designer on staff who works with our clients in the planning phase, also with my project developer to figure out what are we going to do to improve your home, you know, create renderings, work with clients on selections, and importantly, create a detailed and precise proposal for what it's going to cost to do it. And then, of course, I have an office manager who's also my bookkeeper. She answers the phone typically, and so that's our entire staff. And I go out. I'm the president. I mostly go out and meet our clients for that first meeting, possibly a second meeting, talk about what they're considering doing, and then if they're serious about their project, we have a project development agreement, and I pass it off to the team that I just referenced. If you'd like, I could speak a little bit about, you know, the adjustments we've made about a month ago to the company, because once we saw what was unfolding with COVID-19 and the obvious danger that this presents to everyone's health and well-being, we started to think about how are we going to work remotely. So my project developer and my designer have been working from home for 4 weeks now. And we've been using Zoom to conduct meetings with each other and with our clients who had hired us previously to develop their project. My office manager has been doing about half working from home, following up with client emails and voicemails from home. But then she has come into the office to do payroll and some other bookkeeping. But she can log in remotely for some of that. So she just comes in as needed. And then my carpenters and my production manager have been doing a combination of wrapping up the work that we had going as we were coming into this crisis. And then a few projects have been unoccupied homes, and we've been able to keep potentially one carpenter working over the last month at 1 or 2 of these projects. But we've had some layoff that has happened over this period for the folks that would typically be out there in people's homes.
Sure. No, I think that's obviously part of something everybody's facing. I know there are a lot of local businesses in particular that are really wondering what to do next or how to move forward from all of this, but it's good to see that you've at least got some functionality with your business still going, and you guys have made some adjustments. But yeah, like everyone, you're just trying to figure it out how it's going to work best for you. Chad, there's a couple things otherwise I wanted to get into. You're also the president of the NARI-Madison
Yep.
currently, and as president, NARI's done a lot of really great things for the industry and especially for our local professionals. Members really seem to cooperate well. But one thing as the president that you did, as Project Home, where I work, we're a member too. So I received the letter that you put out to the membership regarding this health crisis. And I wish if you could speak to that a little bit, I'd really appreciate it.
Sure. Well, yeah, so as this whole crisis was unfolding, I thought it was really important to reiterate to the members why I'm proud to be a NARI member, and how that relates to this moment. And so for me, NARI was an association that back in the 90s, when I started my business, I had a couple of friends in the industry and they said, you really should look at NARI. And I said, no, I don't want to be a part of a business association. That's not my, cup of tea. And they were like, no, NARI's different. And I think you should give it a look. And so I did, and I've never regretted it. I got very involved early on. I've been on the board off and on for 20 years now, because NARI is an association of diverse beliefs, diverse political beliefs and diverse beliefs, but we are united in our belief that business should be conducted in an honest and ethical manner. And so NARI does have a code of ethics, which all members basically vow to uphold. And we are dedicated to consumers being both educated and properly cared for by our industry. Because as you, I'm sure know, Jason, because you're also in this industry, remodeling sometimes has a bad reputation. The contractor that, knocks on the door and says you need to replace your roof and runs off with a deposit, or maybe someone who does work that just isn't up to code, isn't what was promised. And it used to be pretty easy to get into the industry as well. Back when I joined 20 years ago, there wasn't any licensing of contractors in the state of Wisconsin. NARI had always been an advocate for licensing because NARI wanted to have some standards so that homeowners could know that the person that they hired both knew what they were doing and was going to make good on whatever obligations they had committed to. So forgive me, I've digressed a little bit. Getting
It's
back
okay.
to so NARI is about ethics and doing right by the consumer. And so I thought, I need to speak to this at this moment. So I told the membership, look, this is why I'm proud to be a NARI member and proud to be your president right now. And I accept the fact that we are a necessary industry as determined by the powers that be. The governor, Governor Evers, and governors in many states have said basically that the construction industry is a necessary economic activity right now. It still needs to be done safely, but we can't just shut down building projects. And yet, as you and I discussed earlier today, working in someone's home as a remodeling contractor, that's a very uniquely difficult thing to imagine doing right now. And I knew that my membership in NARI, that we were grappling with that as individual companies. So I wanted to speak to them to that. And I just said, look, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. And we as an association are dedicated to being professionals, to looking out for the health and safety, not just of our workers, but of our clients and homeowners as well. And so given that, let's work together to figure out how we can stay true to our commitments to each other, to our industry, to the broader public. And, let's do this well and do it right. So a lot of us have hit the pause button, and we continue to talk to each other about, what's it going to look like when we get back out there and are remodeling houses again, with the same sense of confidence that we had back before this particular crisis. And I got a lot of positive response from the membership. I mean, they thanked me for recognizing that this is a delicate moment and that we do need to be thoughtful about it. And the fact that almost without exception, NARI members are thoughtful people. Like I say, we are diverse and in every way you can imagine, but we are thoughtful. And no disrespect to the Home Builders Association, but it's just a different culture in NARI. We welcome everyone who's dedicated to being a professional in our industry. We want every person that is out there trying to be an honest broker and a remodeler. We want them to be a part of the association, and we want homeowners to be able to look to us and trust in us. So we've got to work on that right now. We have this new reality, and I told my fiance, it's a challenging moment to be the president of NARI, but I'm really grateful that I'm that person right now, because I welcome a challenge like this. And I'm glad to be. I hope that I'm able to provide some leadership to other small business owners in our industry that want to do the right thing right now. And together we're committed to that. Eventually we're all gonna figure out how to get back to work, but it's gonna take some time.
Well, Chad, I just have to say, I thought your letter to the membership was both respectful of people's choices, but with some very important words of guidance and things to consider, some things to question and contemplate on, and at the same time, inspiring by your words. So that's what I took away from it, and I thought it was a great type of message to put out. The
Thanks.
difference with the remodeling and building, like building's a little different, right? Because you're not trying to work in a house where people are living there. So it's a
Right.
whole nother animal, of course, between the
It
building
is.
industry and remodeling. And as we know from our work at Project Home, and this as well, is going into people's homes to do any type of work is probably one of the most intimate things you can do for that person. And it's
Right.
personal to them. It's their home. It's an intimate environment. It's where
Yeah.
they live, where they're safe. It's where they should be comfortable. And you want to respect that at all times.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I did have to ask you now about a couple of interesting things. So NARI, I know was approached by local hospitals for masks. They did a member
Yep.
drive looking for masks. I know there was some response there. Your company, though, had a previous outreach. And tell us a little bit about what you guys did for the crisis in New York.
Yeah, well, so one of my carpenters has a good friend who is a doctor in Queens and in New York City. And he had, in his Facebook chats with this individual, was learning firsthand about how dire the need was and how, they were rationing all sorts of things right then at that moment. And this was over 3 weeks ago. And I knew that we were going to have a need locally, but I thought, and we didn't have, I mean, we had a couple of boxes of N95 masks, but those were the masks that were specifically needed. And so I just said, you know, let's pack them up and ship them out to your friend, because it's an emergency there right now. And so that's what we did. And we know that we're going to have to figure out how to have some of the equipment that we'll need eventually to do what we do. But, you know, what we do does not matter. You know, we're not saving lives every day, and we're not putting our life in true harm's way every day the way people in the medical field are having to do right now. And, you know, it's interesting. I'll just, a personal reflection. A friend of mine said the other day when she was in the hospital here locally getting chemotherapy, which she just recently got to start again, had been put on pause. You know, the people that are cleaning our hospitals are actually probably the most important individuals right now. You know, people that, you know, some may disparage or look down upon. I mean, you know, these are the most important people. And it's a reminder how we really all depend on one another for what we do. I mean, I'm passionate about respecting the dignity of the work that people do. And this crisis is a reminder to all of us how important things which maybe we haven't valued as much as we should value are to all of our lives. And so, and I think that's a positive thing that's coming out of this, is a realization that, you know, there is an expertise to every task that any of us might consider doing. Just because, I mean, I think about this all the time with remodeling. I'm in a you know, a vocation where many people do it themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, a lot of people do very good work on their own homes, but there are some tricks of the trade, and certainly some important protocols for safety, which a lot of homeowners are not aware of. And, you know, so you can do something that looks beautiful, but maybe the way that you created it wasn't safe for your family or for yourself. And, you know, now we all need to listen to each other and figure out, you know, how are we going to confront this challenge? So I may have digressed a little bit there, but.
That's okay, Chad. If you know me, I do plenty of that myself. So people, if they know they're listening to anything I'm involved in, they expect at least some of that anyway.
Right.
So I wouldn't worry about it. Yeah, I think is so impressive, you know, and what you said about taking that step and just say, hey, we've got supply. We're going to send it where it's urgently needed. That's the kind of thing that if this health crisis does, and so far we've been pretty lucky here in Wisconsin. We had a governor that stepped up right away, made clear directives. People have been pretty respectful of those, and also the social distancing. So far we're doing okay.
Right.
But if we do hit a spike here, you would hope that other parts of the country or other parts of the world that maybe have gotten through some of the worst would then help supply us as well. So it's that whole mindset: give where it's needed, and hopefully they'll get back.
That's correct.
Yeah, I love that. I did want to ask you, I know you're a big Brewers fan too. So how are you, how are you doing missing baseball right now?
It's tough. I mean, you think about all the things. I love going to the theater. I was lucky, and so, you know, I was hoping to make it to Arizona this year for spring break, and that fell through. But I'm I'm wondering, will there be any baseball this year? I don't know, but I mean, I will say that that's a minor price to pay for the challenge that we have. But I think about all the people in the arts, and I do love sports too, but in the arts, I think about how important that stuff is. I was lucky enough to be at the Overture Center to see Wicked on Wednesday, the 13th, I believe. I was looking at my ticket stub. Maybe it was the 11th. Yeah, because I think Friday the 13th was when everything was canceled, and in March. But we were there that night, and I felt uncomfortable being there because I realized I was in that crowd, and I thought, like, should we really all be here right now? You know, I mean, it's those things you're thinking about, but then you're thinking, well, you know, I mean, you knew that it was coming, like it was what we were going to have to do. But those were weird moments, you know, when you're a little bit ahead of the curve in your mind, but then you go and you do something and you realize I shouldn't be here. So anyway.
No, that's I think it's been an adjustment, obviously, for all of us, and it's been something that I think hopefully a lot of people have really woken up to, even if it hasn't hit you personally or someone that you're connected to that you don't know has contracted this. You've seen enough, you've been shown enough, and heard people's stories that, you know, regardless of some of the information that's put out, that you are aware of it, taking the proper steps and action. And I feel lucky, like I said, to have lived in Wisconsin, where we had a clear directive from the governor pretty early
Right.
on in this, and I feel pretty good about that.
Correct.
Yeah,
I would agree. And I do know some people that have actually contracted the virus, and there's a local business, I'm not going to mention their name, but someone in our remodeling association who, you know, had it kind of go through a part of their supply chain. And, you know, that was a wake-up call to all of us. And, you know, that happened after, or we became aware of that, you know, after we were already trying to figure out how to do the right thing. But it reinforces the importance of all of this, because I know many people who don't know anyone that has contracted the virus, and it seems a more abstract thing. And then once you have a friend or you know someone who works at a business where you have friends, then you realize that, oh yeah, this is real. You know, and unfortunately, sometimes it takes that personal connection for people to really start to sit up and take something seriously. But it is, you know, the thing that I've said at our NARI board meetings, and when I speak to other people, either in business or out in the community, is that, you know, if we wait until there's a crisis, then it's too late. Once the local hospitals are full, then, you know, it is all crisis, you know, management at that point. You can't institute a policy that will then make it all work out. You know, it'll just be dealing with the fallout from that. So I am proud of the local leadership here at the Capitol, and you know, different cities, municipalities that have done things. And they are allowing us to know that even if you or I or one of our loved ones, anyone in the community is unfortunate enough to contract this virus or have some other health emergency, we still now have the capacity to provide care to that individual. And that's so important. We take that for granted. You know, once this gets out of control, that will no longer be the case.
Yeah. I think that that's the whole key. You don't want to be just reactionary to everything. You've got to have that foresight, and that comes from leadership, and right, local leadership, you know, from the mayor here in Madison, from other towns, villages, cities around here and around the state
Right.
have really stepped up, and that's across the country too. Local leaders were the ones to step up and
Yep.
put things in place, and that's what we saw, and that's what we that's why they're so important. That's why those governor's races, those mayoral races,
Yeah.
are all really key to making you stay safe, and having your community be the best it can be. So I did want to ask you one more thing here before we go, and it was about so that your connection to Dane by Local, but also that Dane by Local during this time is really doing some extraordinary things to try to help provide support for a bunch of the local businesses that are struggling. So
Right.
how did you feel when you heard about the connection with the grant program from the county, starting out at 250,000 and then being elevated to $800,000 worth of grants that they're going to give out to local businesses?
Yeah, well, I think that that's amazing, and certainly I have that passion. I was about to give a plug to Dane Buy Local, and you beat me to it there because that's what it's all about. I mean, this is our community, and I love supporting the vendors, the restaurants, the everything local. We just try to be part of the local economy in a very thoughtful way, as a business and then as just an individual citizen. So when I wasn't surprised, but I'm proud of this community that I live in and am a part of. But the fact that the county is putting up some money to help businesses, and that Dane Buy Local is the logical group to help connect the dots there. I'm proud of that. I bank at a local bank, Home Savings Bank, which is a great Dane Buy Local member, and they have been able to. I applied through them for a payroll protection program loan. I got my application into them the day before the program was open, which was a week ago Friday. They closed that loan and distributed funds to us on Friday. So, there's a great example of a local bank that was able to make good on that program, that national program that the Small Business Administration is in part administering. But my hat's off to the county, to Mr. Parisi, and anyway, it's so important.
Yeah, and I loved how quickly they made the decision, and then also how quickly they wanted to get the dollars out to people. So that was really impressive to see too, and that's what local government can do, right? When
And that, I mean, it's all about cash flow right now, because we're all confronting this just as humans. The whole world, this is a global thing. The whole world in some manner is experiencing this, but we just all took it for granted. You go out to eat, or you do takeout, or you buy those things for your pet, or you're going to the grocery store, whatever it is, all these local connections. And suddenly, everything is partially shut down, if not shut down entirely. And we're trying to figure out, well, how can I still maintain some of those relationships? One of my favorite places to go downtown, which is the Tempest Oyster Bar, which is a local business. I know all the people there, and Taco Palace is another favorite spot. But, I've done takeout at these places since everything changed to takeout only. And we're doing takeout from a number of businesses, some that we had hoped to go to. And now it's like, well, we can do takeout from them, and it's just trying to figure out, how do we maintain these relationships so that we keep each other afloat? We're all having to operate at about, if we're lucky, we're operating at half of our capacity prior to this crisis. But to the extent that you still have to eat, you still have to buy things to survive. How do we maintain those relationships? And it's all the more important right now to spend that money locally with local businesses. So,
Chad, thanks for all your insight, your time today, giving us perspective from the remodeling industry, from your business and yourself. And keep up the great work with NARI, with Chad's Design Build, and being a great local citizen. We love it and we appreciate you.
Thank you for doing all these great programs.
All right, we will sign off for today. Tune in on Wednesday. We'll talk to Amanda Metcalf to hear from her about what Metcalf's Market's been doing, and also how this has impacted the grocery industry. So stay tuned, be safe, be well, everybody. Take care.